the big news coming out of LSU's program over the weekend was that they awarded the numbers of 7 and 18 to a couple of linemen, as it was announced this weekend by LSU football that Will Campbell, left tackle, will wear number 7. Now he'll have a patch on his collar, kind of like Lloyd Cushenberry did in 2019. Not kind of like Lloyd Cushenberry did, exactly like Lloyd Cushenberry did back in the championship season, where he was awarded number 18. Campbell awarded number 7. The first time the number has been placed on the line of scrimmage, and for Campbell, he was recognized as the best player on the roster from the state of Louisiana, which seems to be, I guess, the definition of what number 7 is, even after it started with the tradition of Patrick Peterson. Mekhi Wingo, I don't know. Mekhi Wingo was awarded number 18 over the weekend. This is not a big surprise, I think, to people that were trying to throw the dart at number 18 to see where it landed. I think Josh Williams and Mekhi Wingo were overwhelmingly the two odds-on favorites to land the number. When I saw that Wingo was going to get the number, I thought it made perfect sense. He was awarded a team captain a couple of weeks back. A captain is awarded off of, going through the SWAT team in the offseason, which is a leader. He was named to a leader of a SWAT team, which means that he is the leader of a group of 10 players and teammates that he is overseeing and making sure that they have things like questionnaires that need to be turned in on time, showing up for all classes, showing up on team meals, just the responsibilities of being an LSU football player. And Mekhi Wingo, since he's shown up, not just this summer, not just this offseason, and not just on this team, on his first team at LSU last year, he was a name that consistently would come up when leadership was talked about. So from the leadership standpoint, from landing on those two guys, as far as them being awarded the numbers, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, it's something that I think makes, from just you say it out loud, it's easy to get behind, right? With Mekhi Wingo wearing 18 and Will Campbell, who's going to be wearing number 7. I was a little surprised by it in the sense of I thought Harold Perkins was going to end up with 7. I thought that maybe Malik Neighbors was going to end up with number 7. But seeing Will Campbell get the number, I got no problem with it. I mean, I think, the way that I've always recognized
that's my thing.
Number 7 has always kind of been a playmaker, a skill player, just really a game changer that you were always talking about going into the game, and usually was the centerpiece of the game once it kicked off. And while Will Campbell is, maybe maybe one of the best offensive linemen to come through the program in the last decade plus, this is something that we've never seen. We've just never seen number 7 on the line of scrimmage, and it's different. And if this is what it's going to be, if it's going to be the best player on the roster from Louisiana every year.
My whole thing is, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it kind of sets a precedent that what if you get somebody outside of Louisiana that is a Patrick Peterson? Now what?
Or Harold Perkins.
Right, who's from Louisiana technically, right? And now he can't, doesn't it feel like he can't wear 7 because they're on the same timeline?
Yeah.
Campbell's going to be 7 until he leaves, and Harold Perkins will be here until he leaves. Kind of shirks the tradition to me just a little bit. Like, I know it's not the biggest deal in the world and nobody really cares, but if we're going to care and make it an announcement, it feels like it's a little bit different than anything that's ever happened before because you're taking Patrick Peterson out the equation now.
Well, you're right, and I don't necessarily know if 7 was ever defined, right? Like if there was ever a true definition of what
to be explained.
Sure. But I think that what Brian Kelly has done now, he's turned it into a recruiting tool. He's turned it into a legitimate recruiting tool, right?
You could go that way.
Where you have seen players come through here, and when they do their photo shoot, right, like where they go to the top of Tiger Stadium, they're in the locker room, they're in the facility, a lot of times you see 7 on their back, right? Like they recognize that number 7 at LSU is a pretty special number. And now with Kelly kind of defining what 7 is, he's saying that, look, 7 inside the program is the best player from the state of Louisiana on the roster. Well, I think now you've got a real defined recruiting tool, and you've got some at least understanding of what it is. I mean, like, I get you. Like, I love that Patrick Peterson and Tyrann Mathieu and DJ Chark and all these people were 7, and Leonard Fournette was able to get it as a true freshman and, stepped into that role. I understand what it was building towards. Now that it's defined.
Yeah, it makes sense at least a little bit.
Right. Like,
I just don't like the fact that you're taking Patrick Peterson out of the history of who started it. You changed what it was to me.
Sure. No, and you have.
But I like what it is now.
I think
I get it.
You've defined it, and I think you've also kind of less pressurized it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly, which is so weird to have to even have this
kind of
conversation.
like taken a step back and like said, like, look, we're not going to just throw number 7 at people and expect you to be Patrick Peterson or Tyrann Mathieu. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was something that kind of was a little bit of an issue with it. You know, I mean, it was glaring on people like Jonathan Giles and Kayshawn.
Right.
Right, where you're like, well, there's number 7, and you're like, well, we still don't know what that really means. You know, like, I mean, like, we're supposed to look like Patrick Peterson. That's what it means to me. You know, I mean, that's what I thought, because everybody that comes through here and wears it is dynamic. Yeah, right. I mean, top 5 pick. So, I mean, it's now that it's got definition to it, now that, Brian Kelly has come out and kind of said, look, this is what number 7 is inside the program, and this is who's going to get it. I'm okay, sweet. Like, I guess that's how we're going to do it, And then when you get to 18, I think 18 can just be defined as leader, right? Like, it doesn't have to be skill, doesn't have to be playmaker, doesn't have to be line of scrimmage, doesn't have to be, first team starter, doesn't have to be any of this stuff, just leader. When I think of 18, whether it's Benny Logan, Richard Murphy, Foster Morrow, on down the line of guys that have come through here, worn the number, Lloyd Cushenberry to Mekhi Wingo. Brandon Taylor, guys that just popped to mind. Every single name I have rattled off is a leader. Jacob Hester, Matt Malk. Even where it started. Those guys are, by the definition, leaders inside of the locker room. Still leaders. I saw Hester on Saturday. He and I were watching our kids play 7th and 8th grade football together at U High. He still has that cachet to him when he's even around like other dads. He has this leadership quality to him that I think that's what is defined in that number at LSU. B.J. Ojulari. We had a great relationship with Ojulari over the last couple of years. When I think of Ojulari, I think dominant football player. I also just think leader, great person, good dude. Mekhi Wingo's the same way. He comes through here. He was captivating in the sense of he was just a good dude. He was just a good guy, a good person that you could tell really took his responsibility very serious. Whether it was his workouts, his class, his social life, whatever it was, he put a lot of
cachet
investment into, what it meant. Just being a leader. I think that nobody from.
I think Hester feels like he kind of personified it and made it what 18 is. And it could have been, you could say Flynn, but I feel like he really owns what it's supposed to mean and wants it to be appointed to the right person. And Mekhi Wingo's a great choice. I thought it could have been Josh Williams as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, Josh Williams and Wingo made perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when I think of the 18 fraternity, the face that I think of is Hester. Like that's who I think of. Like he's the guy who kind of like oversees it. When I think of DBU, I think of Corey Webster. Like when I think DBU, the first person I see is 13. I see him tipping the football to himself at Georgia, or in the Natty. Like it just when you when you say number 7, I see Pat Pete and Tyrann Mathieu.
Me too.
Like I can't get past those two, and I understand that there's a fraternity that comes along with all of that. but there's just these recognizable faces that have come now with this, I guess, tradition at LSU now. I mean, both have become now long-lasting where you can call them traditions. I mean, the 18 goes back to the 03 national championship season with Matt Malk. Number 7 goes back to 2010 with Patrick Peterson. I mean, you're talking about things that are over a decade, over 20 years in the sense, or a 20-year anniversary, I guess, for number 18 here in 2023.
If I didn't feel old before.
Right. So, look, I kind of like where they sit now. I mean, I kind of like that 7 is defined. And, you can get away with giving away.
Yeah.
You can get away with giving it to Perkins. At this point, like by the letter of the law.
Right, because he's going to be a patch. Right.
Well,
that was going to be my only.
Well, not only that, he's from Louisiana.
Yeah.
You could still. I don't know if necessarily some people behind closed doors.
He's got 504 tattooed on his bicep.
Or I know like the Stingley discussion, and I know Stingley personally. That's why we were there last night. And shout out to Tom Granning, our guy over at GoMart. Tom Granning over in Natchez, and has been so great to the show, man, since day one. Came through with some tickets last night. Great seats to watch Houston and New Orleans, and was a couple of sections over from Coach Sting and his wife Natasha, and was they were obviously there watching Derek. Derek was a scratch right before the game. I was texting Coach Sting 2 nights ago. I said, "Is he going to play?" And 2 nights ago, he was going to play. Derek was telling Coach Sting that he is anticipating playing a couple of series. He might play 1 or 2 series, and then in the game, in pregame, as they were getting warmed up, D'Amico Ryans looked at him and kind of did the, "Nope, we're good. You're good." He's had a fantastic training camp. I don't know if you've seen some of the highlights coming out of training camp on him, but he is. In talking to him a little bit and talking to his dad. There is a new defense in Houston that very much suits Sting. I mean, you're talking about getting back to his days of freshman year, high school, where, you kind of got him out on an island playing a little one-on-one. You can help him with some stuff, but for the most part, I mean, I saw some dual practices coming out with Miami and Houston, and he made a break on a pick that looked like freshman season of LSU. I know that he's motivated by a lot of the discussion around Sauce Gardner, being the 4th overall pick, and obviously him having a stellar rookie season. Sting was having a pretty good year until late, where he got a little nicked up. And Houston, Houston was the one that made the decision to kind of shut him down late in the year. They didn't want to risk injury on their top overall pick, knowing that they were going to change coaching staffs and bring in a new regime, and wanted to just kind of keep him healthy. So I expect a really solid breakout type season in year 2 for Derek Stingley. But being there last night and watching Houston and New Orleans play, was able to talk to Coach Sting, and it was great to see him. Obviously, I kind of lost my train of thought. I don't know how we got to Sting. Was it DBU?
DBU 7.
Yeah.
And
that Sting was, he was number 7, but I mean, like, he's been 24 his whole life, right? And Harold Perkins is kind of the same way, right? Where he was 4 his whole life, and not necessarily do they say, like, Jamar Chase was the same way. I remember when they went to Jamar Chase, and he was,
I kind of wanted to be
1. He was kind of like, I mean, I love it. I really, it's an honor. It's an honor, absolutely. But I mean, some people become tied to a number, married to a number.
And it felt like at LSU, 1 was kind of like the wide receiver of 7, and DBU was kind of 7. Right. It felt like it was going to be somebody like that always played the defensive back position, which why it made so much sense for Stingley. But the way that it kind of fell off the tracks a little bit, and now this at least gives it a rebrand in a sense with Will Campbell, and it being it's a Louisiana thing now. So at least, because it kind of needed a rebrand in a sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Where it was lost.
No, it did. It needed some definition. If it was going to stay on the books, like if you were going to keep this and make it a tradition,
you defined it.
You needed to define it, right? Like, what is it? Because every year everybody's like, I mean, you can give it to Perkins, you give it to Neighbors, you give it to, like you just give it to the best player on the team, kind of is what it felt like. But now with some definition, I think you kind of take the politics out of it.
And you don't, like you said earlier, I don't want to keep talking in circles about it, but it takes that pressure off of, like, it was obviously you're the best player on the team, and it felt like they had to live up to a certain standard of what that meant. Because everybody looks at you and goes, oh, that's the best player on the team.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, like,
I got to show out every game.
When you're running out of the tunnel, you're usually like, hey, get up front. Like, get 7, bring him up front. I mean, that's the dude. So,
but I like it. It's something.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it defines Brian Kelly, too, in a sense, to where, like, he's going to be here for a long time as well. He's got a 10-year contract. So now we know what number 7 will be for the next 10 years, and we know that Brian Kelly's probably going to be here for 10 years.